And welcome to our Canadian Grand Prix review. What a race that was. More of them for 2024. Yes, please. We had Russell on pole, but not winning, potentially choking. Did he? We'll get into that. Ferrari. Oh dear. Heroes to zeros, but not necessarily their fault. They just didn't have the car. After all the talk of a championship, what happened? Max Verstappen winning it. Well done. I mean, yeah, he started second, but what a race for Max Verstappen. A contrast to Sergio Perez as well. Oh my gosh. But, you know, this guy's with him for at least another year. Fun, fun, fun. Let's get into the race. We'll speak to you after this. So, welcome back to the Hot Lap, and we are talking the Canadian Grand Prix review. A few I want to talk though before we get into our driver by driver, and we'll be doing it last to first, as you know, the usual. I would very much like to get into a few of those race highlights, as you can see here. The first of which, as you can see above me, Alexander Albon. This was the first ever move. He's behind the two. He basically overtook two cars in the braking zone and through the final chicane. An absolutely fantastic race, only to be taken out, an innocent bystander, of Carlos Sainz's ineptitude. Okay, maybe that was a bit harsh, but yeah, Carlos Sainz not really very good. Being a sole Ferrari, having that spin, hitting Alexander Albon, which I do genuinely think, if you look on board, it could have been avoided because he kind of like turned the car, and the way he turned the car with the steering wheel, I'm no expert, but even when you play the games, you know that car's just going to come back on the track. Very silly, I think, from Carlos Sainz. So, yeah, and yes, Sergio Perez. Oh dear. I don't really know what to say at this point. Qualified 16th, did nothing in the race, was in the late teens for a lot of the race, and then makes a mistake. Okay, you know, it's easy to make a mistake and it's wet. But this is a Perez that was out of the Monaco Grand Prix. Not necessarily his fault, if you believe some people. I don't think it was his fault. But out there at Monaco Grand Prix, simply because one of the main reasons he didn't qualify very well. This one spun. I mean, when all the other people, the only other guy that really, you know, Sainz spun, Logan Sargent spun and was out. So it was happening, but it was almost inevitable at that point, you feel, that Sergio Perez was going to be another statistics of the Canadian Grand Prix. And George Russell, did he bottle it? This guy started on pole. He had really good pace early on, and then it was just like a barrage of little but significant mistakes. Fighting Lando Norris, fighting Piastri. The Piastri one I thought was fair enough. You know, you both went for it. Really good, really strong defending from Piastri. Well done. Can't wait. I mean, I even think Max Verstappen is going to have a bit of an issue with Oscar Piastri, but George Russell, yeah. Did he? I mean, comment below. Let us know. I'd love to see your thoughts on whether George Russell bottled the fact that he could have won the Grand Prix. Every time he seemed to get in a position where, yeah, he could now either, you know, he's looking like winning it or at least catching the winner. Maybe he wouldn't have caught Verstappen, but still. But yeah. Underwhelming, I think. Third place, definitely disappointing. And this was Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz. Albon out. And it could be because of Carlos Sainz's spin. I was devastated because now the Alpine team are ahead of Williams. I think Williams are now second to last, I think, in the championship. And Sainz is, let's be fair, very likely the reason. And also, what an amazing battle between Lewis Hamilton and George Russell. Both of them absolutely sending it. A bit of a question why Lewis Hamilton was on the hard times. I've just finished watching Ted's Notebook. If you don't know, he's one of the Sky journalists, and he was essentially saying that, yes, Hamilton did have another set of mediums. Why did they put that on? I don't get it. That didn't make any sense. Also, what didn't make any sense was putting Leclerc on the slick tyres when it was actually raining. That's another one I didn't really understand. So let's get into the drivers then. So who finished last? Okay, well, yeah, I've just reminded myself of who finished last, and I don't think you'll be too surprised. Yeah, it was this. There we go. Where was it? This guy right here, Logan Sargent. what was, to be fair, one of his best qualifying positions. Oh dear, Logan. I mean, I thought maybe finally this is the weekend where he could put his name in the hat, at least half of his name, a toe, tipping his toe in the hat at least. No, didn't happen, did it? So from one guy that we're not really surprised at to another guy that we were, Charles Leclerc. What an absolutely horrible weekend he's had. From the Ferrari going in thinking, and including us thinking, yeah, these guys are the favourites to win Canada, but they weren't, were they? No. A very exceedingly underwhelming qualifying, a bad qualifying really, 11th, and just missing out on the top 10. And then there was seemingly nowhere really in the race. And to be fair to Leclerc, he did have an ERS problem. So he was struggling with that for most of his race. And the fact that he was struggling with it and he was doing as well as he did, I think absolutely fair play. But then came that really long pit stop where they were almost deleting the car, and it seemed to work. And they decided to put the hard tyres on. The hard tyres, to be fair, was the best race tyre. Everyone said it's going to be the best race tyre. But then it started to rain and they kept him out, and that was just a bit, I don't know why they did that. More naughty Ferrari, I think, than bad Leclerc driving badly. Very much Ferrari 2022. We want Ferrari 2024. But he didn't do as bad as this guy here. We have spoken about him. Yes, Sergio Perez, Red Bull's new re-signee. The latest now it is a 2-year deal, but the latest is not a solid 2-year deal. It's like a 1+1 deal, which obviously will have clauses in. Yeah. What can you say at this point? I questioned the signing for Sergio Perez. No detriment to him. He does bring an awful lot of good to Formula One, but you need to be a good driver most weekends, and he's a good driver some weekends. And the odd weekend, he has the pace to beat Max. Fair enough, but he's just not consistent enough. And for someone of his experience, it is just unacceptable, isn't it? So from Sergio Perez, who was the master of his own demise, to someone that that's not Fernando Alonso yet, but to someone that was not the master of his own demise. Really solid qualifying, looking like you could nick 10th, 9th, or 8th, or maybe even higher. But the bottom echelons of the points. Disappointing. You've got Carlos Sainz to thank for that, Alex Albon. And speaking of the other Ferrari, here he is. The Carlos of the Sainz, a very disappointing weekend again for Ferrari. Again for Carlos Sainz making that mistake. He didn't really show much pace over the race as well. And that was in spite of his teammate, Charles Leclerc, having problems. Yeah, so it was a bit of an embarrassing weekend for Carlos Sainz, looking very much like Ferrari's number 2 at the moment, compared to Ferrari's potential number 1 at the beginning of the year. So I think he needs to step it up, although everyone's saying he's got that Williams seat, but no announcement yet, and he said it's not official, but let's see. So from Carlos Sainz to someone that they started in the pit lane, Zhao Guanyu, and he finished 15th, I think, a lap down, but the important thing is you finished. I mean, you beat the likes of people like Perez, Sainz, Albon. I mean, and 2 out of 3 of them are race winners. So, yeah, well done, Zhao Guanyu. And Yuki Tsunoda, Yuki, you nearly did so well. He did so well to hold on to those intermediate tyres, and then the whoopsie. The upsie-daisies happened. Not Yuki's greatest race, really solid qualifying, but very much, it's like him and Ricciardo have swapped around again, isn't it? Let's see what happens next weekend. But I think it's just a blip on Yuki Tsunoda's radar. And another guy that I think did fairly solid, despite starting from the pit lane, Valtteri Bottas. I think 13th is probably about as good as you were going to get in the Stake F1 team. And what's going to be interesting is, going into the Spanish Grand Prix, will Valtteri be confirmed in a seat? Potentially Williams, depending on what happens with the Audi. It looks like Audi Sauber don't want him, because they've even been talking about Ocon. But then could he go to Haas? Could he go to Alpine? And all sorts. So from Bottas to Kevin Magnussen, who provided us with bags of entertainment at the beginning of the race. Well done to Haas, putting on the full wets. And he got up as high as, I think, fifth at one point, didn't he? And he was doing absolutely fantastic. You know, they took the risk. It worked really, 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 really well. And I think the fact that it dried out a lot just showed that they didn't really have the pace in the end. But it would have been interesting, I think, had it remained wetter for longer. I mean, that would have been really, really interesting. And the same for Hulkenberg, who ended up finishing 11th and beating Magnussen. Did not qualify him, though. But yeah, I think a solid 11th and 12th, a solid weekend for both Haas drivers. So now we're getting into the top 10. And in 10th was the potential villain from Monaco. But well done, Esteban Ocon, pretty much starting at the back with your 5-place grid penalty. And he even said he did let Gasly by under team orders. He's intimated, I think, in some of the news reports that he may regret being Mr. Nice Guy, but still, well done on that 10th. And also, well done Pierre Gasly on the 9th. Double points finish for Alpine, which now puts them ahead of the Williams team in that World Championship. Yeah, well done, guys. And this guy here, I mean, yeah, you qualified in the top 10 and you finished in the top 10. You finished, oh, sorry, I just hit my mic. You finished 7th, Lance Stroll. So I raise my congratulations to you. A really, compared to some of your outings, let's say, a really solid result. A bit of a comeback there from Monaco. So well done. And it wasn't only him doing well, it was also Alonso doing really well, especially holding Hamilton up for like the first quarter of the race until the pit stops. And I think Mercedes just did a quicker pit stop. So did George Russell actually, as well. They nearly took the lead from Verstappen, didn't they? I think in that first safety car. But well done Fernando Alonso. Really solid stuff there. And solid stuff, I think. He might be disappointed with 5th after starting 4th, but really good defending there against George Russell. Not making it easy. As I said earlier, I cannot wait for this guy, Oscar Piastri, for that McLaren to come good and to start having battles with Max, Lando, possibly Lewis. This guy, I think, is as tough as nails. He makes mistakes, but nothing really flaps him much, does it? So, and I still think he's got massively room to improve. It'd be really interesting in the second half of the year how much he's going to trouble Lando Norris. It was really disappointing at the start of the year, I thought. Then came Miami, where he potentially could have won it. And since then, he seems to have bags of confidence, doesn't he? So, yeah. One guy I think that will be really disappointed. I've seen a few of the news clips, and he has said himself that he seems to think this is one of his worst ever weekends in his career or races. I don't think it was. I think you started 7th, you were 3rd at one point. I think the team put him on the wrong tyres. But he still did the fastest lap on, let's be fair, not the optimal tyres. So fair play for Lewis Hamilton for the extra point for fastest lap. I don't think he's got too much to be ashamed about, really. Bearing in mind, he finished right behind his teammate, who started on pole and arguably should have really won the race. And let's talk about his teammate. Yes, George of the Russell. Massively disappointing for us there, George. I thought you could have won it. You didn't. Sadly, I mean, you finished half a second behind Norris. In total, he finished 4.3 seconds behind Max Verstappen. But still, yeah, a disappointing race there. Despite 3rd, yeah, I'm sorry, George. I was underwhelmed by your performance. But I think Lando Norris did really solid, especially at the beginning of at the beginning of the race, George was quick. He was really good in the wet. And the reason why I'm downplaying George is because of the mistakes. Lando didn't really everyone made a few mistakes, but none like George Russell levels. He had a really solid weekend overall. And when, in that first stint, when it was drying, I mean, before the safety car came out, oh my gosh, was he fast. I mean, he led the race. He was leading the race at one point, but I think, in double figures, 10, 11 seconds before the safety car hit. He was looking favourite for the race. I think Max arguably had the faster package at some parts of the race as well, and key parts of the race, but it was the safety car that kind of screwed him over. It was like a copy and paste of Miami, but in a mirror universe where Max Verstappen took advantage of that safety car. So yeah, you can call him a bit lucky for the safety car. He was, but then he did show that he had the pace. He had the race just about, I think, under control. And I feel he may have been vulnerable had the pack behind him, second, third, fourth, not just continued to fight each other. Because I don't know if he was the fastest, car driver combination here this weekend. But because of all the changeable conditions, I'm not sure. I'm sure they'll be a lot faster in Spain. But I just want to say a massive congratulations to Max Verstappen. My man of the race, though, might be controversial. It's going to go to this guy here, Alexander Albon, simply because that absolutely mega move on, I think Danny Ricciardo and the Alpine. I'm not sure who it was either, Gasly or Ocon, but that mega move, 2-in-1. Really good, and a really solid weekend for Alex Albon. Looking at Williams, looking really competitive, I think, compared to the beginning of the year. Special mention also to the wonderful Max Verstappen and Lando Norris, and George Russell. No, George. I think you should have won it, really, George, or you should have been a lot closer than you were. But George just made too many mistakes. Anyway, that has been our Canadian Grand Prix review. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see more, and we'll be having probably the Canadian Grand Prix fallout, all the news coming out of the Canadian Grand Prix over the next day or two. So stay tuned for that. Also, we'll be talking touring cars at some point tomorrow as well. Stay tuned for that. Give us a subscribe. That will be absolutely fantastic. We will speak to you next time. Thank you very much.